I guess the question is Christianity a club that only certain people can get into? And I think the emphatic answer that we see in Scripture is that it's not a country club. That anyone, whatever your background, whatever sin you've been caught up in, that God receives all that's at His altar, and His blood is sufficient for all. So, it brings us to the question, I was joking about the title. My title is Do the Right, Wrong Things. And I'm Bill Mackey. I'm actually doing church planning, training under Chuck. And Chuck is away in Lancaster today. So I'm here, and I know many of you, and I know many of you know me probably too well at this point. So the veneer of my preacherness is completely shattered, as Chris Gertmanek would say in time. Because he's been with me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not always a nice guy at 3 o'clock in the morning. But
we love you.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm always a nice guy at 3 o'clock in the morning.
But it's good to be here. I know that you've been sharing on Do the Right Thing. Is that the name of the series you've been doing? Is that right? I got it right. That's good. It's all good. So mine is Do the Right Wrong Things, wrong quotation marks. Chuck and I were talking this week, and I was praying about what to share. We're talking about engaging culture. And you know what? If we're going to, I guess I should slide over a little bit. If we're going to engage our culture in a meaningful way, it's going to get a little tricky, you know? If you put on a nice pair of white shoes and you go walking through a swamp or mud, it's going to be kind of tough. You're going to encounter some tough questions and some challenges. Or we could just be really safe about it, and we'll just keep those white shoes on, and we'll just stay in our nice, pristine chapels and never get our feet dirty. But if we're going to engage our culture, it's going to be a challenge. And there'll be times where we say, am I doing the right thing? Some people are telling me it's the wrong thing. I thought that was the right thing, but this person says it's the wrong thing. What am I supposed to do? And I thought an interesting passage for looking at that was in John's Gospel, chapter 4. If you would turn there, if you have a Bible. We can put up that first panel. I've stolen some ideas for the message today from a wonderful book that I highly recommend by Rebecca Pippert. That's P-I-P-P-E-R-T. It's called Out of the Salt Shaker and Into the World. She has, I don't know if the idea is original to her or not, but she talks about in this book, which is a book about evangelism and reaching out to the world and engaging our culture. Friendship evangelism, you could call it. She uses the term radical identification. Radical identification is when we as believers engage the lost world. And we don't just give a perfunctory, how do you do, yeah, I go to church, stay away from me. But we actually engage those people and develop relationships, and not just a surface relationship, but deep, meaningful relationships, where we do what Jesus did, which she used the term of that he radically identified. The story is told of, it was noon, this is an Amplified Bible, and after Jesus' disciples had gone into town to buy some food, I notice that he's alone, a Samaritan woman came to draw water from the well, singular woman. Jesus asked her, would you please give me a drink of water? Now, a lot of versions have give me a drink, but I think the meaning of if you study it, he's asking a question, and he says to her, give me a drink. So, first thing, of course, everybody talks about with this passage is what? What's the most important thing everybody always mentions?
She's a Samaritan. She's a woman.
She's a Samaritan, and less often talked about she's a woman, but that is also part of it. But
Adulterer.
Oh, you're giving it away. Spoiler alert.
That's the.
Here she is, this woman comes alone to get a drink, and Jesus had been taking a journey from Judea, and he was headed north to Galilee. Now, a lot of people, if you grew up in church, I don't know how many of you heard this, but what I was taught, and what I heard many times in messages, is that the godly Jews, they never walked through Samaria because they were half-breeds and they were dirty and they'd be rendered unclean if they were around them. So they would walk all the way around. Well, I did a study in Josephus on that, and not really necessarily true. For one thing, back then you walked everywhere. You didn't have cars, of course. But what if I told you, even if you're driving by car, well, you can go two ways. Now, the one way, it kind of takes you through kind of a little bit of a tough area, a couple tough towns, but it'll take you 3 days. I don't know about that. I'm not sure. That tough town section sounds good to me. There's another way, though. Oh, you have a shortcut? Well, no, it's a long cut. That'll take you maybe 5, 6, maybe 7 days. You'd be like, are you kidding me? I'm going to drive 3 extra days just to avoid that? And if you're thinking in terms of walking, can you imagine if you had to walk 20 miles a day? So it says here in John 4, it says that he had to pass through Samaria, speaking of Jesus and the disciples. And he came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, being weary from his journey, was sitting thus by the well. And it was about the 6th hour. So here we have, they're in unfriendly territory, there's no doubt about it. But the fact is that the straightest way to get from point A south to point B north was to go through Samaria. And for whatever reason, it says here in Scripture that was the way that's the way Jesus had to go. Some people talk about, oh, well, he had a divine appointment, and that's certainly true. But it just also could be practical. I mean, it costs a lot of money to travel 6 days on the road as opposed to 3. Even if you don't have a Hotel 6, you know. But here they are. They're in a situation. They've walked probably a good 10 miles already that day. Jesus sits down by a well. He's exhausted. He's probably drenched with sweat. He's tired. He's thirsty. And along comes this Samaritan woman. Now, there was a lot of battles between the Samaritans and the Jews. The Samaritans were offspring of some people that came from the northern tribe of Israel, and they were of mixed background, Jewish, Gentile. And they also had some peculiar religious beliefs that included syncretism involving other types of religions with Judaism. But they followed the first 5 books of Moses. They believed in those. But they had their own temple, they had their own priesthood, and they had this rivalry between the Jewish people. So he comes into this, and there were times where they had, there was a recorded story where Jewish pilgrims were attacked on the road, and there was a big battle about that, but Rome got involved, and you don't like to get Rome upset. So generally speaking, you could do it. It just was not the nice part of town to go through. You ever been there? And depending on who you are, that defines probably sometimes what you consider the nice or not so nice part of town. But here was Jesus. He encounters this woman, and we know that she's by herself. It's the middle of the day. It's at noon, which is kind of an odd time. If you're going to go and carry heavy water, normally you would go in the morning or the evening. She's by herself. And so now here we have this encounter. It's going to get a little awkward, because we have this Samaritan woman who, as Chris already pointed out, she has kind of a loose background. I don't know if that was apparent by her her approach to him. But
if I can interject,
yeah, sure.
I was always told that it was apparent because of going to get the water at noon. She was socially shunned for her background, so she couldn't go and get her water at dawn or at dusk. Noon was like the only time available for her.
Everybody hear that? That certainly implies, and as I was saying, she's coming at noon at an odd time of day. She's by herself, not with other women. So while the Jewish people considered Samaritans to not be the nicest kind of people to be around, well, this woman, not even the Samaritan people, for the most part, seemed willing or interested in hanging out with her. So she was a very lonely, isolated person. Ever been lonely, isolated in your life? Feel like you didn't have a friend at all? Nobody wanted to hang out with you? Not even your worst friends, you know. That was her case. You know, when it gets so bad, you know, if you've ever been in a financial crisis, you know, you start shedding friends pretty quickly if you need money or resources, and at a certain point, you know, nobody wants, as soon as you come around the corner, everybody runs from you. Well, she was a person that no one wanted to be with. But Jesus does something completely unexpected. Here he is, this Jewish rabbi teacher, encounters this woman by herself, and kind of an awkward situation. He's sitting by the well, she's there. You know, sort of that time to sort of hum to yourself or whistle. No, instead, Jesus says to her, please give me a drink of water. So here we're about to see the idea of how Jesus radically identifies. So next panel. Key to radical identification is, first and foremost, is to be present. Oh, excuse me a second. What's that? Okay. Yeah, I'm preaching right now. Could I get back to you? I know it's important, but wait a second, I get another call. Hang on. Not really, but you ever talk to anybody and you feel like, I really feel like you're present? You know? You're always distracted. You're always staring at your phone. I got this smartphone, and it makes me feel stupid a lot, but you know, you can always be connected. And when I first got it, I realized it was kind of like that guy. I went out to dinner with Kathy, my wife, and you know, the guy's checking the scores in his phone. And he's like, oh, you know, he's talking, and she says, "What? Did you just check your scores, or what's happened there?" I said, "What am I, Bengali? I can just summon scores to my phone." You know, we have a lot of competition for our attention today, don't we? And